Okay, so let me paint a picture for you. A show comes back after 4 years. The internet has already decided it is going to be terrible. The critics sharpen their knives before a single episode drops. The creator has been called a fraud. The star of the show has become one of the most divisive figures in Hollywood. And the Rotten Tomatoes score, a catastrophic 40%. And yet, 20 million people watched it globally in its first week alone. That is not a flop, that is not a show dying quietly, that is a cultural event. Today we are breaking down exactly how Euphoria Season 3 pulled off one of the most interesting comeback stories in recent TV history, why Sydney Sweeney's role in this season is genuinely fascinating, and why the controversy around this show actually made it bigger, not smaller. Stick around because this goes deeper than people think. Let's go back to 2019 real quick. HBO drops Euphoria, a show about a drug-addicted teenager played by Zendaya and her circle of friends living through the kind of chaos that most TV dramas would never touch. It was raw. It was visually stunning. It was extremely uncomfortable to watch, and that was completely the point. The show built a fan base almost overnight. It was the kind of series where people talked about individual scenes for weeks. The cinematography alone felt like it belonged in a film festival, not on cable television. And the cast, most of them relatively unknown at the time, became stars almost immediately. Now fast forward to 2022 and Season 2. By this point, Zendaya has won 2 Emmy Awards for the role. Jacob Elordi has transitioned from the guy from Kissing Booth to a serious actor. And Sydney Sweeney, who plays Cassie Howard, has become one of the most talked about performers on television. Season 2 averaged over 16 million viewers per episode over its full run. That is a massive number for an HBO drama. The show had arrived at a completely different level of cultural significance. Then silence 4 years of it. The Writers Guild strike hit, production was delayed, then delayed again. There were genuine questions about whether Euphoria would ever come back at all. Zendaya herself, in an interview, basically said she thought the show was over. And in that silence, every single cast member went and built their own career. This is actually the part of the story that most people gloss over, and I think it matters a lot for understanding Season 3's complicated reception. Between 2022 and 2026, the Euphoria cast stopped being promising young actors and became actual movie stars. Zendaya starred in Challengers, a tennis drama that had critics losing their minds in the best possible way. She's in the Dune franchise. She has Spider-Man films lined up. The woman is now a legitimate Hollywood leading lady at the highest level. Jacob Elordi got an Oscar nomination for Frankenstein and led a production of Wuthering Heights. He went from playing a toxic high school jock on Euphoria to being discussed as one of the best dramatic actors of his generation. And then there's Sydney Sweeney. Her path has been a little different and honestly a lot more interesting to analyze. Sweeney did The White Lotus. She did Anyone But You with Glenn Powell, which was a box office hit that people really did not expect. She produced and starred in Immaculate, a horror film. She has a role in a film called Christie. She has been everywhere. But her fame has also been more complicated. She became a subject of internet debate in ways that the other cast members mostly avoided. Her ad campaigns, her public image, her choices, everything became a conversation. And that complicated fame is something Season 3 of Euphoria leans directly into, in a way that is genuinely clever, which we will get to. The point is, these are not the same people who filmed Season 2. The show they are returning to is not the same show they left, and the audience watching has very different expectations now. Before Season 3 even premiered on April 12th of 2026, people had already made up their minds about it. The reason is simple: the story details leaked out and people reacted strongly. In Season 3, the show jumps 5 years forward in time. The characters are no longer in high school. Rue, played by Zendaya, is now 23 and working as a drug mule to pay off a debt. Nate and Cassie are engaged and living in the suburbs. Cassie, played by Sydney Sweeney, is trying to fund their dream wedding through, and this is the part that sent the internet into a spiral and OnlyFans account. Now, the response to this online was immediate and pretty vicious. Critics said the show had lost its soul. Fans said the characters they loved had been turned into something unrecognizable. Some viewers argued that the storylines, particularly around Cassie, were gratuitous in a way that crossed a line. And Sam Levinson, the creator of Euphoria, was already a divisive figure. His other project, The Idol, had been received as a critical disaster. People were primed to dislike whatever he was going to do next. So all of that context landed before anyone had seen a frame of the new season. Here is the thing though, and this is what makes the viewership numbers genuinely surprising. All of that negativity functioned like rocket fuel for attention. People who wanted to watch it wanted to watch it. People who wanted to hate watch it tuned in anyway. And the result was a premiere that pulled 8.5 million viewers in the United States alone in its first 3 days. That was a 44% increase over the season 2 premiere. The controversy did not kill the show, it launched it. Let's talk about the actual data here, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Within the first week of season 3, the premiere episode had crossed 20 million viewers globally. That is a 68% improvement over what the season 2 premiere achieved in the same time frame. Episode 2 matched the premiere, 8.5 million viewers in 3 days, which almost never happens. Usually there's a drop-off. The fact that the numbers held steady means people watched episode 1 and came back. That is retention. That is the sign of a show that is actually working on some level, regardless of what the critical consensus says. By the numbers available, Euphoria Season 3 is tracking as one of the top 3 HBO seasons in the platform's entire history. Not just recent history, the whole history of the platform. And HBO Max as a streaming service has also grown enormously since Season 2 aired in 2022. The platform has millions more subscribers now, which means the audience pool is larger. But even accounting for that growth, the percentage jump is significant. Now, the Rotten Tomatoes score, 40% from critics, 43% from audiences. Those numbers are genuinely bad. Season 1 of Euphoria sat at around 80%. The gap between critical reception and viewership is one of the more fascinating disconnects in recent television. What does that mean? It means people are watching something they are not entirely sure they endorse, or they are watching something they think is problematic but cannot stop. Or, and I think this is actually the most likely explanation, the audience for Euphoria is not particularly concerned with what critics think. Okay, here is where I want to spend some real time, because the Sydney Sweeney situation in Season 3 is genuinely layered in a way I have not seen discussed enough. When Season 3 picks up, Cassie Howard has the life she always wanted. She is Nate. They are engaged. She is planning a massive wedding. In Seasons 1 and 2, Cassie was defined by her desperate need to be chosen by Nate by anyone. The bathroom breakdown scene in Season 2 is probably the most iconic piece of acting in the entire show, and it worked because Sweeney made you feel every single layer of that character's self-destruction. In Season 3, Cassie has been chosen, and she is still not okay. She launches an OnlyFans. She becomes obsessed with her image on social media. She wants the wedding to be perfect. She wants the life to look right, even if it does not feel right. And the show is doing something pretty sharp here. It is drawing a direct line between the girl in that high school bathroom and the woman performing a version of herself online for an audience. Now here is where it gets genuinely meta. Sydney Sweeney in real life has built a portion of her public image around a very calculated presentation of herself. Her Dr. Squatch soap campaign, her American Eagle campaign, her lingerie brand. She has been remarkably upfront about understanding what Hollywood wants from her and delivering it on her own terms. And Cassie in Season 3 is doing something almost identical within the fiction of the show. Variety noted that Sweeney in a past interview said she told creator Sam Levinson to push Cassie further into the mania. She said, and this is roughly paraphrased, "Give me more of that." She wanted the character to go to more extreme places, and in Season 3, that is exactly what happens. The critics who say Sweeney's storyline is gratuitous may be missing the point. The character playing herself for an audience, while the actress playing that character is herself known for playing herself for an audience, that is a Hall of Mirrors situation. Whether it works for you creatively is a personal call, but it is clearly intentional. Of all the roles Sweeney has taken on since Euphoria first aired, Cassie is still the one that feels most true to what she is capable of. And Season 3 seems to know that. I also want to acknowledge something that does not get brought up enough in the conversation about Season 3, and that is the real-world grief sitting at the center of this production. Angus Cloud, who played Fezco, one of the most beloved characters in the show, died in 2023. His death was a genuine tragedy, and Season 3 opens with a tribute to him. If you were a fan of the show through its first 2 seasons, watching that premiere knowing Fez is gone permanently adds a weight to the whole thing that the ratings and the discourse really cannot capture. Eric Dane, who played Nate's father Cal in the first 2 seasons, also passed away earlier in 2026 from ALS, having completed his work on Season 3 before his death. His presence in the show and his absence from the real world is another layer of heaviness to what audiences are watching. Kevin Tierren, one of the show's executive producers, also died in 2023. This is a production that has been marked by loss in a very real way. And whatever your feelings about the creative direction of Season 3, that context matters. The people making it and watching it are carrying grief alongside the drama. Okay, so the question everyone is asking, where does the show go from here? Sam Levinson, speaking at the premiere of Season 3, said there were no plans for a fourth season. Zendaya, in earlier interviews, suggested she believed Season 3 would be the final chapter. But here's the business reality. When your show is pulling 20 million global viewers in its first week, when it is the #1 title on your platform, when it is trending on social media for hours at a time, the conversation about whether to make more changes very quickly. HBO has every financial incentive to want this show to continue. The audience has demonstrated clearly that it is still there. The gap between seasons did not kill the fanbase. It arguably made it hungrier. The complication, though, is the cast. These are not the same rising stars from 2019 anymore. Zendaya is one of the biggest names in Hollywood. Elordi is an Oscar-nominated actor. Sweeney has a production company and a full slate of projects. Getting all of them back for another season and getting them aligned with a script they believe in is a much more complex negotiation than it was even 4 years ago. Levinson's track record post-Euphoria has also been uneven, and that is something the cast likely factors into their decisions about where to spend their time. So Season 4 is not confirmed. It is not dead either. It is sitting in that strange in-between space where the numbers say yes and everything else says maybe. My read, if Levinson can deliver a final season pitch that feels like a real ending rather than an extension, he might get the cast back. If it feels like more of the same, some of them may decide their time is better spent elsewhere. Let's zoom out for a second because Euphoria Season 3 is actually part of a broader trend worth thinking about. We are in a moment where the relationship between critical reception and audience behavior has completely broken down. Shows with low Rotten Tomatoes scores get watched by tens of millions of people. Shows with perfect critical scores get canceled because no one tuned in. The metrics that the industry used to rely on no longer describe the same reality. Euphoria Season 3 is a textbook case of controversy-driven engagement. The more people talked about what was wrong with it, the more people watched to see for themselves. That is a dynamic that streaming platforms increasingly understand and arguably are not entirely unhappy about. There's also something worth saying about what Euphoria has meant culturally across its full run. At its best, the show captured something real about how a certain generation experiences the world, the loneliness, the performance, the way social media warps identity, the way trauma gets passed down and dressed up and never really resolved. Season 1 did that brilliantly. Season 3 is reaching for some of the same ideas but in a different register. These characters are adults now, and adulthood in the Euphoria universe looks like high school with more money and fewer excuses. Some viewers find that compelling, some find it exhausting. Both reactions are legitimate. What is not debatable is the scale of the audience showing up to have that reaction. So here's where we land. Euphoria Season 3 should have been a disaster by every conventional measure. The 4-year gap, the creator controversy, the backlash before it aired, the low critical scores after it did. And yet, it broke records. It brought 20 million people back globally. It reminded everyone involved why the show mattered in the first place, even if the reasons for watching are more complicated now than they were in 2019. Sydney Sweeney's Cassie remains one of the most interesting characters on television, even when, maybe especially when, she is doing something the audience finds uncomfortable. And the question of what comes next for this show, and for the cast that grew up inside it, is one of the genuinely interesting open questions in television right now. Whether Season 4 happens or not, Euphoria has done something rare. It proved that the audience does not always follow the critics. It proved that controversy, managed or not, is its own form of marketing. And it proved that when you build something that people genuinely feel something about, even something complicated and messy, they will show up. That is the video. If you found this useful or you have a take on Season 3 that I did not cover, drop it in the comments. I read all of them. And if you want more breakdowns like this one, subscribing genuinely helps this channel grow. See you in the next one.